Luke Cook, what up?
Yay!
Welcome back.
How was the White House?
Dude, the White House was incredible.
Great.
What an honor. Yeah, insane.
I have many questions, but number one, did you do your hair?
I did my hair, yeah.
What does that look like for you? Because you don't do your hair very often. So, like, do you know how to do your hair?
Well, it's a fine balance, you know?
Right.
It's like you've got to... The carefully unkempt look
Is your thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
do you have a brush?
No brush.
So
No.
you don't take a brush when you do your hair?
No.
You just put gel in it?
I never use a brush. I don't use gel. I use a pomade. There's actually a brand called Jack Henry. Have you ever heard of this brand?
No.
They use it's like a hair clay, and now they have a hair cream, and
Okay.
I like both.
Yeah.
Yeah, for that matte finish,
Yes.
light hold.
Well, you know, pomade used to be like petroleum based, right? So like men would my dad used to tell me this, but you know, you'd go to work, and if it was hot that day, your hair would be like seriously on burning. It would hurt so much because it was a petroleum based
Oil. You're just frying your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Gross.
Crazy.
Terrible. So is Jack Henry fancy? Like, is it good ingredients, or doesn't matter?
Yeah, I have no affiliation with them. I just I got sent one of their products. I think it was the clay, and I used it, and I really liked it, and so that's what I've continued to use for the past 2 years. And the other secret to having, I guess, if you want to call my hairstyle a hairstyle, is when I discovered that not shampooing your hair every single day actually makes your hair look better.
Right.
That was that was revelatory to me.
For us, when you've got our length of hair, shampooing is not that necessary at all.
Yeah.
Like, just going like this in your, vigorously once every couple of days underwater is
But
good.
the shampoo industry doesn't want you to know that.
Right.
There's a conspiracy to get guys like us to shampoo our hair every single day.
I never ever shampoo my hair. Just I don't think I have for 5 years.
It looks better when you that natural.
Yeah, I think
the
so
natural
too.
Oils, yeah.
I
It's
think
like
so
a
too.
natural pomade.
Right, there you go. But so tell me what happens when you go to the White House. Like, what's the lay of the land? You guys had a dinner the first night, and the next day was a big day where you did a whole bunch of stuff there?
Yeah. So the first night I arrived, and I got in at around 4:30 in the afternoon. I checked into my hotel, and then we had a dinner with. I was staying in the same hotel as Vani Hari, the food babe.
Yeah, wow.
And who's wonderful. I've gotten to know her a bit more over the past year. And she's just so passionate about what she does, and so sweet and so funny and so
Great.
charismatic. Yeah, she's just so great to be around.
She's really led this movement in a big way.
She has,
Yeah.
she has. All credit to her. And so, yeah, met up with her in the lobby, then went to this dinner at a restaurant in DC called Farmers something. I forget the name. Farmer.
So it was a good one, farm to table, like fancy restaurant.
Yes.
And Gary Brecker, Ben Greenfield, all these people that I know were there.
Yeah.
And was the food healthy and good?
Food was healthy.
To
food was
everyone's
great.
liking?
Yeah. I had a New York strip steak.
Great.
And I think the coolest thing is when you get all those people in a room, obviously in the world of social media, everybody kind of has everybody has a different way in which they have decided to tackle this sort of public health problem, right?
Yes.
And people bring their own sort of biases and backgrounds and passions to what it is that they do. And so obviously not everybody, I don't agree with every position or every approach or tactic or style of everybody that was there. But the one thing that I think unites all of us who were there was that we're passionate about making America healthy.
Right.
And it's not a political thing. It's a completely nonpartisan passion for, I think everybody that was there, me, and I'll speak only for myself, but yeah, that was just really cool to be there with people who were just united in vision for a healthier country.
Great. And then you did podcasts and stuff. Did you speak to how does it work? Did you speak to Congress? What was the whole idea of going there?
So it was incredible in the sense that, well, first of all, podcasters are now being taken seriously as a type of journalism, as a press medium.
Totally.
And
I saw that Tim Dillon interview.
Yeah.
Where CNN were like, you guys affected the election. You're the new establishment. And he's like, what, comedians? You think we're more powerful than CIA, all the multi-billionaires in the world? And undoubtedly, look, I just think the left is saying goodbye to so many people because they just are intolerant of views that are slightly divergent from theirs. Like, it's like any kind of movement out of what they see as okay is like, oh no, you're not good. And so they're losing so many people, comedians, health individuals like yourself, and all those, those people there who've essentially gone, okay, actually, I don't see myself as liberal anymore. I can see more of myself on the right.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to move that way in order to move this country forward.
100%.
But yeah. So you were saying podcasts are that they've been been seen as powerful, and they are powerful.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and I also love how the legacy media always says like, well, we lost the election because we didn't have our own Joe Rogan. But I'm like, you've got Trevor Noah,
Jon Stewart.
Yeah, and Tim Dillon made this point that you actually. They do it's just that voice has become, they ran an incredibly unlikable, unpopular candidate.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of effort to get her elected. I mean, on behalf of Hollywood, on behalf of the nighttime shows, the day show, like
billions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. They have their own oligarchs. Like it's completely this false,
anything but self-reflection.
Yeah, anything.
Anything but like, what did we get wrong?
Yeah,
and anything that they got right is evil. It's like, oh, podcast isn't, and it's like, you mean a grassroots, movement?
Yeah, exactly.
I do think like a little bit of navel gazing is necessary on both sides, but particularly on their side, I haven't seen much. The Democrats haven't really like looked into their navels to kind of go, what did we get wrong?
Yeah,
it's all about, oh, what did the evil people get right? And I think that's necessary. So was there speaking to any politicians and Congress and?
Well, here's what's cool. So there was actually a room that was in the White House that was designated as it was called Podcast Row.
Okay.
And so there were about 6 podcasts all set up to do sort of like a speed dating style rapid interview with rapid set of interviews with whatever officials the podcasters had wanted to have on their shows. So.
Cool.
Paul Saladino had a little booth. Dr. Mark Hyman had a booth. Courtney of Real Foodology had a booth. Alex Clark, Will Cole, and a handful of others. And I thought to myself, like, this is a historic moment. I mean, this is like the first. I told I forget who it was that I was speaking with, but it's like, this should actually go in your bio to be like among the first podcasters to record at the White House. Like, what a huge privilege that is, not just for you, but for the medium and for, for anybody involved in this.
And so who did they speak to?
I mean, RFK Jr. was in there for a bit. He did the rounds. Marty McCary,
nice.
Dr. Oz, Jay Bhattacharya.
Wow, and this is
just incredible.
They're the new guys, right?
They're the new guard.
That's incredible.
Yeah. They are literally like from the FDA to the NIH to the HHS, to CMS, like, they're running health in this country.
And then what's going on with Casey Means? Is she coming in?
Well, she was nominated.
So she's nominated, right?
So as far as I know, we have yet to, at least as at the time of recording this, we don't yet know if she's going to get confirmed. But I hope she does. She's got her heart in the right place. She texted me completely out of the blue, unsolicited on Mother's Day to send me love and well wishes. And that's just the kind of person she is.
She's a very kind person. I went to a dinner one time surrounded by health people, and I met her, and she was so clearly the smartest person at the table. Like, I'm like, oh wow, you're another level of intelligence. And so when I see people or hear people talking crap on her, I'm like, there's just no way if you met her that you'd feel that way. About her intelligence or her background in medicine aside, but the type of person that she is just like, she's a beautiful person. Like, she's a very kind person. And the fact that she messaged you like that on Mother's Day is so
it's amazing.
Thoughtful.
And people will say, well, she didn't complete residency, but the job of the Surgeon General is to be the country's primary health communicator. And the last time, at least, in my lifetime, the last time the Surgeon General ever had a prominent role in the public discourse was around smoking. When was the last time you've heard a Surgeon General address the chronic disease crisis or the metabolic health crisis in this country?
Yeah.
And we know that these are the things that Dr. Casey Means is so passionate about.
Yeah.
And
Great.
so I'm optimistic. Yeah, I don't know how things are going to play out. I will continue to say that I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not formally involved, but I think it's really important to be optimistic, not to take your foot off the gas in terms of the pressure that we're putting on these officials, but to be optimistic and to, you see so many on social media now that'll just like anything this administration does, will just come out shrieking about it. Mm-hmm. And
I think this is one area that we can all kind of surely. I know people will find their ways to disagree, but this is one area we can all agree that there's forward movement on, and there hasn't been forward movement for years.
Yeah.
It's funny to read these articles. I read that article that you sent me about why are Americans obsessed with protein? Blame MAHA.
Let's get into it. So protein is now apparently racist. Is that what the article?
It's that MAHA is pushing the idea of protein. Apparently, one of the 3 macronutrients.
Wow. Let's read the headline. Why are Americans so obsessed with protein? Blame MAGA.
Peter Cohen, an internist at Cambridge Health Alliance and associated professor at Harvard Medical School, who leads the center's supplement research program, says everyone's letting their testosterone out these days. One thing he's noticed is more men than women arrive at his office interested in protein. Oh, well, could there be anything worse than being interested in protein?
Right.
Or showing up to a doctor and going, hey, can you tell me a little bit about protein? What the hell's the problem with that?
Yeah. Crazy.
I know. There's only 3 macronutrients.
Right.
And you're allowed to be obsessed with all 3 or just one of them. And it's like, of all 3, it's like, and protein, the word comes from the ancient Greek proteus, which is like of utmost importance.
Exactly.
It's like, it's important. Maybe. Ask your doctor about it.
Yeah. Ask your doctor. It's crazy that there would even be the suggestion of a political conspiracy around one of our 3 macronutrients.
Yes, it's incredible. God forbid we take an interest in what we actually eat.
Exactly.
Exactly. And then I love this part of the article. An obsession with protein affords a masculine-coded cover on the feminine-coded world of body image and dieting, and a subject over which men can bond as bros. I have so much to say about this. Okay, so an obsession with protein affords a masculine-coded cover on the feminine-coded world of body image and dieting. Why is dieting and body image feminine-coded?
Yeah.
Since
exactly.
when has that just been about women?
Right.
That's sexist. What she said. How dare she? I'm offended. And then she goes on to say, and a subject over which men can bond as bros. Oh, God forbid we bond over something.
Right.
It's like, oh, please don't bond over protein. How dare you? It's like, oh God, yeah, it's so toxic of us. Like, God, what can men fucking bond over?
Well, exactly. And also boys in particular are in the midst of a mental health crisis. I mean, all people, all Americans are these days, but boys in general, like, we've done a number of podcast episodes in particular about the mental health needs of boys that are just being completely unfurnished by social media and by the demonization of masculinity and men, humans in general, but I would guess men in particular have always bonded around cooking protein over an open flame. Right?
Like for thousands upon thousands of years.
Yeah.
People sitting around cooking meat.
Exactly. Men are hunters.
Yeah.
And cooking meat is likely responsible, or at least played a role in the growth of the development of the evolution of our brains. Mm-hmm. So to demonize protein and make it out to be some like conservative bro thing, it's just so insane. And I think that's part of the reason why so many have lost trust in the legacy media.
Absolutely.
Because they'll make asinine, just bizarre statements like that.
I mean, this is what, coming from, we live in LA. I'm very much entrenched in Hollywood as an actor. Leftists, like, Hollywood is a left town. It's a left industry. Leftists love health and wellness. They want to look as good as they possibly can. Every snatched waist and muscular butt that you see on TV is probably held by a leftist who loves health. Why are we making out to be like health to be some obsession on the right? It's bullcrap. Mm-hmm. And leftists know it. Mm-hmm. Look at Hollywood. Mm-hmm. All those buff guys on the Avengers, they're all leftists. What are we talking about?
Exactly.
It's so crazy. Anyway, I love this quote. She was talking about Theo Von and Joe Rogan talking about protein. While acknowledging that some people do well on a vegetarian diet, not for me, said Rogan, before sliding into a tangent about Rogan's avoidance of pizza that becomes somehow aggressively erotic. If I've had a couple of cocktails, Rogan murmurs, I probably would have grabbed a slice. Theo Von begins shifting in his chair. Oh, fuck, yeah, boy.
That was a good Theo Von.
Yeah. A couple of tequilas, Rogan smiles coyly. Next thing you know, I want some pizza. Oh, dude, I'll do whatever after that, boy. I love that this is quoted in this article, like these evil demon men talking about like wanting some pizza after they've had a few beers. It's like, oh, isn't it awful? It's so pathetic. And also I love that they use that quote to talk about how men are obsessed with protein. It's like, oh, they're talking about how they want to eat pizza.
Yeah, I think there should be a mandatory testosterone check before you get the green light to write an article like this, because the author just strikes me as, yeah, like what's going on there?
Right.
But let's talk about why it's actually not conservative at all, and why it's actually quite beneficial from a health standpoint to prioritize protein. Like, why is everybody talking about protein now?
Yeah, I think it's well kind of the 4 horsemen of longevity, one of which would be muscle mass and strength, and protein helps your body and your muscles recover. Not just that. So amino acids go into your hair, skin, and nails. And then if you're doing physical exercise, which breaks down muscle, protein builds it back up. So to repair and build lean muscle mass, which is one of the 4 horsemen of longevity, you want to be eating enough protein. And the recommended daily allowance is essentially like the minimum amount that you can have without dying is like 0.8 grams a pound or something like that. Or maybe it's 0.39. It's a very, very small amount. And we know that isn't sufficient, especially if you're a person who exercises. And to look to basically around a gram per pound of body weight, it's pretty good. It's pretty good and pretty doable. But there's you can do less than that probably too and be completely fine. But I think, protein is like the word says, of utmost importance.
It is, yeah. It's the most satiating macronutrient. Mm-hmm. It's got a powerful anti-obesity effect. It supports your muscle mass, as you said. It tends to ride alongside other very valuable micronutrients. There was actually a study. I mean, I've criticized in the past, and I think it's right to criticize protein washing, which is now occurring like among ultra processed foods. Mm-hmm. Ultra processed foods now, like you go through the aisles of your supermarket and everything's like high protein this, high protein that, and you look on the back and it's like, actually this has 8 grams of protein and 400 calories. Maybe it's higher protein than like a tortilla chip, but
yes.
But there was a study, actually, this was just published in March of this year in the journal Nature Metabolism. The title of the study is Short-Term Effects of High Protein, Lower Carbohydrate, Ultra-Processed Foods on Human Energy Balance. And what this study found was that higher protein, ultra-processed foods, as would be predicted by the higher protein, knowing that protein is the most satiating macronutrient, ultra-processed foods that are higher in protein are more satiating than low-protein ultra-processed foods.
There you go.
So you'll still, because they're ultra-processed, they tend to be hyper-palatable. You'll still eat yourself into a calorie surplus if all you're doing is eating ultra-processed foods. But the calorie surplus seems to be smaller when the ultra-processed foods have more protein in them.
Yeah, interesting. And also, it's because ultra-processed foods, I wouldn't usually think have any protein. And I mean, by nature, ultra-processed foods, I think, are things that are high in sodium, fat, and carbohydrates. Very rarely have they got any protein in them at all.
Right.
But these ultra processed food groups, companies are obviously pushing protein into it, which means that people are going to be eating less of them. It's interesting, like how food companies are also trying to get around the effects of Ozempic. They're like, okay, so people don't want to eat our ultra processed crap anymore. How are we going to hijack that somehow and continue to make money? And they're worried about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're shaking their boots.
Yeah.
But that to me is like, it's so crazy that, because that there are people that are going to read that article. Like, we read it ironically,
yes,
to like try to understand, and we will get a chuckle out of it, right? I'm like, what the hell are they talking? But there are absolutely people who are reading that article, and now because protein has become, according to the article, this like MAGA buzz term,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
They'll disregard
everything
they hear about the benefits and the value of protein.
True.
Right? And maybe as a point, as a form of political dissidence,
we'll
like start avoiding protein.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have conversations with people all the time.
It's like natural selection.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody today about, the MAHA movement, because I was mentioning that I was coming here and you just gotten back from the White House. And he's a friend of mine. He was just saying like, oh yeah, I think that it's probably good, but it leads with fear. It leads with, we don't trust any of the, the establishment as it stands. We don't trust the food companies. We don't trust the pharmaceutical companies. We don't trust the government. We haven't trusted the government so far to deal with this problem. And I'm like, interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. But I also go, we shouldn't trust them. They haven't done right by us. We're in a chronic disease epidemic.
Yep.
We need to be making moves consistently away from whatever's got us here. And the establishment is partly to blame for where we are.
Yeah. It's unbelievable that, like, one of the things that kept coming up again and again on the round table when they released the report was that there were going to be no sacred cows. Is that the term?
Maybe.
Yeah.
So like no sacred areas. Like
basically
you can ask any question.
Yes, exactly. That like we were going to go up against the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and I don't recall ever having a president, or cabinet that was so willing to just go there.
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, the courage that it takes. Like this is like big business that we're talking about.
Yeah, and much of the establishment I've seen talking around, particularly vaccines, has been like, no, it's settled. No, there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
No, they're studied so perfectly. And it was interesting to see, is it Dr. Joel Gator or Joel Warsh?
Joel Gator Warsh, yeah.
Gator Warsh. Oh, okay, there you go. He's an interesting person. I just saw him go on Mark Hyman's podcast, and he's a pediatrician, and he's my son's pediatrician.
Wow.
And him talking about, why aren't we telling parents, to prepare their kids as best as possible to get vaccines, so that the side effects of getting them can be handled better. But if we were going to admit that there were side effects, then we would be admitting that there's something wrong with them in the first place. But because none of the establishment has ever said that there are side effects or never looked into them, that we never know. And so we're dealing with an establishment going, their vaccines are all okay. There is no problem with them at all. Rather than a bit of nuance and going, there can be side effects. Here's how you can prepare as best as possible. Whatever that looks like, taking a high dose of vitamin C, giving your kids a high dose of vitamin C, for instance, before going and getting a vaccine may be super helpful, but you'll never hear about that because nobody ever says that there are side effects. So instead, you've got this lack of nuance where it's like, there's nothing wrong with them, or people going, oh, there's everything wrong with them.
Right.
And maybe there is some middle ground, but we'll never know what that looks like. But maybe now there's a chance of actually going, okay, here are the side effects and here's how you can handle them better. Mm-hmm. And here's how to help your kids actually deal with getting vaccines. Anyway, I think it's an exciting time for that because there are no sacred questions.
Yeah. Well, vaccines are a perfect example of like a sacred cow.
Yes.
that is no longer sacred.
Yes.
That we can, we should be able to ask these questions. Especially like, obviously vaccines are a public health good. Like I'm not anti-vaccine. They're a public health necessity. But when it comes to individual health, I think that's got to be something that should be a conversation between you and your doctor, or you and your pediatrician.
Definitely. It is one of those broad strokes that you go, well, there's nothing else in the world that you demand that everybody gets other than vaccines that isn't individually catered.
Yeah.
For every sickness that you have, your body is going to deal with it individually, different to 7 billion people in the world. But this one thing we go, no, everybody has to get that. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's worth questioning.
Absolutely. Did you see that article in the New York Times? The headline was, "Some restaurants are ditching seed oils. It may cost them."
Okay.
That I thought was a really puzzling...
It may cost them, meaning people will stop coming to you because... I couldn't read it because it was behind a paywall, so I'm going to guess what it was.
Yeah, I guess.
They were saying it will cost them because it'll be more expensive to produce the same food that they used to with cheaper ingredients, so people won't be able to afford to come to them, or it'll cost them because people love canola oil so much and soybean oil that...
Yeah, it's going to cost them... Well, so the article, obviously, the whole slant is that seed oil hysteria is... again politicized. It's political. It's tagged to the MAHA, RFK, MAGA tribe, and so it took this very skeptical look at the trend now that we're seeing with various restaurant chains and individual restaurants like Sweetgreen, True Food Kitchen, and other smaller restaurants, mom and pop restaurants, who are now making the switch from historically using refined, bleached, and deodorized seed oils to now using oils like sugarcane oil or algal oil or avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, butter, tallow, etc.
Yep.
And so the crux of the article was basically that these oils cost more money than canola oil or soybean oil, and that it's gonna reduce margins for these restaurants, which are already typically pretty margin strapped.
Right.
But I read the article, and there's definitely some sleight of hand that they utilize in the article. They'll make statements like, yeah, so and so oil, sugarcane oil or algae oil will cost 24 to ranging from like 20 to 30% to 4 to 6 times more than avocado oil. But it's like, how much oil are these restaurants actually using? Like, we're talking about the cost of oil, and
right.
And most of the time, you're not eating a food that, unless it's like a fried food.
Yes.
So yeah, it is potentially going to increase the oil costs, but that might not necessarily. It's like the difference between absolute risk and relative risk. Like, it might increase it 20% more in terms of the oil costs, but what's the net cost that's being passed down to the consumer? Probably not very much.
Right.
Unless we're talking about something that's like heavily using lots and lots of oil, but I can't imagine what that food would be.
True. Like going into a McDonald's where everything is fried or fries has been made.
Yeah.
For them to switch, I can see that would be difficult for them, but I'm sure they could figure it out. They always do. They're cheeky. They'll find a way to make it work. But when I think about a Sweetgreen meal, it's like, other than the dressing and the oil that the meat was cooked in, of which there's ways to cook meat without oil anyway nowadays. So I'm interested in how much oil is actually in a meal at Sweetgreen. If I don't use the dressing and I eat the meat, how much oil have I consumed anyway?
Exactly.
So Sweetgreen is an ideal example of a restaurant where that would be very easy. Did they say anything about people not wanting to go to restaurants that don't use seed oils? Like, will people be like,
no. So what it actually says is that certain restaurants have seen a 20 to 25%, if not more, increase in the amount of customers that, in their customer flow, because people are now deliberately seeking out restaurants that purport to not use seed oils.
Yes.
So they're actually seeing an increase in customers, and people will now search on apparently Yelp for like seed oil free restaurants.
Yep.
There's an app called Seed Oil Scout,
Yep.
which basically lets you find all the restaurants in your hood that are seed oil free. So it's actually leading to a boost in sales for the restaurants, although it's increasing the cost somewhat of their oil costs. But on the other hand, a lot of consumers, and I think this was alluded to in the article also, are willing to pay somewhat more money for food that's seed oil free.
Yeah. I mean, it means that the people who are making your food are more conscious of what they're putting into your food.
Yeah.
These like refined, bleached oils and things like that. The fact that people who are making food are like, I don't want to put that in the food of people I'm going to feed. They're more conscious of what you want and what's better for you. They're making an effort they're going to an effort for you so that the food that you eat is better for you. And whether you think it's better for you or not, it's like the actual act of a restaurant going, I wouldn't want to eat that, so I'm not going to feed it to somebody else, is thoughtful and kind.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a beautiful thing. It's like when you cook for anybody, it's like, I would want to eat that. Let's 100%. All eat it together. It's a beautiful thing.
I would 1,000% choose a restaurant that has opted out of using seed oils in their kitchens.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you feel the same way?
Oh, 1,000%. Love it. It feels good. It also feels aligned with what I believe, which I don't believe that seed oils are good for you. But it's part of a wider movement away from industrial made food product that we don't trust. Mm-hmm. Like, for me, it's not about necessarily the nutrition or lack thereof in seed oils. It's also the way it's produced, which is like gross and disgusting and very cheap. It's very cheap stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's 2 restaurants in LA that I want to give a shout out to. One is, have you been to Palms and Patties? It's a burger joint in Santa Monica.
I have not.
It's owned by this young dude, super smart guy who created, basically, it's like a smash burger. spot out of a ghost kitchen, essentially, in Santa Monica. And they're now doing 5 times the business that the size of their location would otherwise allow. Like, they're just killing it.
Wow.
And they don't use any seed oils. Their fries are fried purely in tallow. And even their sauces, like their special sauce that they put on their burgers, like only avocado oil.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's it called?
So Palms and Patties.
Perfect.
Best burger I've ever had.
Wow.
It's so fucking good. Yeah.
Sick.
It's incredible.
There's a place called
Even
Burger
the ketchup,
Lords.
organic ketchup.
What, they have a ketchup?
Yeah, it's organic. No, they don't make it, but it's like they use organic ketchup.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
So it's like no high fructose corn syrup.
Oh,
Heinz
wow.
ketchup is like all high fructose corn syrup, pretty much.
Very good. Yeah. There's 2 burger spots on the east side, one in Chinatown and one somewhere else, called Burger Lords. And they use a regenerative patty, regenerative buns, and no seed oils.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What's it called?
But Burger Lords.
Burger Lords.
But you have to be over on the east side, and we're not on the east side. But
yeah,
it's
we're not.
very good.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
The other place that I ate at recently, this place, it's actually called Tallow, Talo.
Oh, cool.
Crosby hasn't told you about it. He's
No.
Yeah, so I went to their opening where Crosby's Cookies, he had a little pop-up. It's sort of like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's basically like a fast casual, like to compete with Cava or Chipotle or whatever. You get like these protein bowls, and it's so freaking good. They also have tacos, one of the best tacos I've ever had. Seed oil free. And the other thing that I'm starting to see now in kitchens, which I think is so cool, is like they'll publicize. I mean, it could all just be virtue signaling. Who knows at the end of the day? But like what they've said is that they don't use any plastic cutting boards in their kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah, which is just cool. Like,
Yeah.
you want to eat at a restaurant where they're looking out for your health as
Yes,
much as
totally.
they're looking out for the bottom line.
Totally. Absolutely. We just got Shakewell. We just did all the testing for heavy metals in our protein drinks.
Ooh, amazing.
So we launch next week, June 2nd, California only. But so we did glyphosate, lead, mercury, all none. And we were like, okay, we need to blast this out. Because people are worried about it. People said to me the other day, were talking to me about protein, like, I've heard about protein powders having high levels of heavy metals and things like that. I'm like, it's a good, if people are worried about it and waking up to it, it's like, okay, well, how do we handle people's worries in that regard? I've heard about microplastics. I've heard about, cooking foods in certain ways or chopping boards that are plastics. Like, I want to feel better about that. Restaurants just going, hey, we don't do any of that. Here's how you know. And that's cool.
Have you seen those videos on social media where people will cut using a plastic cutting board, and it just sheds all of these?
Totally.
Yeah. Like hundreds or like thousands even of pieces of microplastics, like visible to the naked eye.
We all need to get better at that. I mean, I need to get better at that. Sorry. And I'm like
Just don't use a
hyper
plastic
aware
cutting
of it.
board.
What do you use?
Just any wood.
Any wood?
Yeah.
But I heard wood can hold bacteria. This is a subject that I'm not cool with. I'm not that.
Just wash it with soap and water. I think you probably also want to make sure that I don't know. I would just buy a wood. I don't know. John Booz, isn't that a good like common high quality brand of cut? Just buy a wood cutting board. I know that there's like what's the wood coated with or anything like that, but just wash it.
Sure.
As opposed to I mean, our brains now contain a tablespoon's worth of
Yes.
microplastics.
Did you hear about how oats themselves can bind to PFAs in your body and take them out?
What, the beta glucan in oats, like the fiber in oats?
That's right. Yeah.
I know that fiber, that's one of the reasons why I think fiber is beneficial. Despite what all the carnivores will say, I think fiber is still good to consume because it traps and sweeps out contaminants in your gut.
I don't know any carnivores anymore. Because
Yeah.
Saladino's not even a carnivore anymore.
He's not.
Yeah, so it's like, who are the carnivores? Are they still there?
Yeah, I don't.
We were talking.
Sean Baker's holding out. I think he's still
Is he?
fully. Yeah,
Is he? But he's fascinating though.
he is. I think he's brilliant. He's actually my favorite of that
The ilk.
group, of that ilk. Yeah.
Yeah. What about we were talking off air about Mark Smelly Bell. There's a guy, if anyone isn't aware, his name's Mark Bell, but Mark Smelly Bell on Instagram, and he's doing a sugar diet. And yes, he is, and in each and every one of his posts at the end of it, he'll write in the caption like, "I am also on performing enhancing drugs," but he is like maple syrup, fruit, candy, and only that until night when he has some protein. And he's lost a lot of weight, and it's fascinating. Everyone's like, "Is this a joke? Are you pranking us?" I think he's for real. And I mean, I think he's really doing it. And I also think he's exercising his tits off for all the energy that you get from the glucose, which it is a our primary energy source.
Yeah.
Probably our body's preferred energy source. So he's training at very high intensities. He looks incredible. He looks great.
Looks amazing.
I'm like, okay. I think he's showing off the resilience of the human body. It's
Yeah.
like your body can do this.
Well, that's why you have to look with great skepticism at any diet zealot who's like, my way is the best way, because the human body is so incredibly adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
And you literally could have the body of your dreams on any permutation of a diet, so long as, control for protein, that's carbs and fats, titrate up or down according to your preferences, to make the diet more sustainable for you. But this idea that you have to eat a certain way, I think what Mark is doing, it's just another data point showing us that our diets can be a lot more flexible than you might think if you spend a little bit of time on social media.
Yeah, that's
wellness
right.
circles.
I think that once you start to muck around with it, once you start to get into health and wellness, you can kind of have fun with it.
Yeah.
A little bit, and you'll learn things along the way and go, oh, that didn't work. I haven't taken a crap in 3 days or something.
Yeah.
You'll figure things out.
Probably not ideal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, he's the man. The sugar thing is like, it's interesting because you've got all this energy. Carbohydrates don't actually convert to fat all that easily. You really have to be in a mega calorie surplus in order for that to happen. And I just don't think that a lot of people will say that sugar is addictive. I think it's addictive in the context of ultra processed foods that are hyper palatable, but you don't see people what's the word? Mainlining sugar by itself. Mm-hmm. Like sugar outside of the context of added fat, salt is like, it's not that tasty.
Right. Yeah.
So by itself, I don't think that it very easily converts to fat. And so if that's what he's consuming all day long, then, maybe it's just giving him more energy to burn more calories.
Yeah, that's
maybe
right.
he's, it's increased his NEAT, his non-exercise activity. I think there's probably some mechanism there.
I certainly don't mind, especially timed carbohydrates, like thinking about when I'm going to exercise, especially with high intensity, and eating some sugar around that, and not just fruit, like candy, something that's high in glucose before exercising. I like it.
Yeah.
How's your back, by the way?
Back is good.
You did deadlifts the other day, I saw.
Yeah, I was doing deadlifts.
I've never seen you do that.
Yeah, I feel like deadlifts are a very technical movement, and I just feel like my body is not primed for it. Mm-hmm. I've just never, I'm just not a power lifter. But I've been trying to do, which as far as my understanding goes, trap bar deadlifts,
okay,
which are a lot more, they're safer to do for your lumbar. Mm-hmm. And
because they switch your lats on, probably. I'm thinking about why that would be.
Yeah, and they're just more comfortable to do when you're tall.
Right.
Do you do normal straight bar deadlifts?
I do, but I don't do them very often, to be honest.
I can't do them without them shearing the skin off of my shins.
Right.
Yeah. So
I do dumbbell deadlifts if I do them, and but I mostly just do squats. So I'll do barbell squats a lot, front squats, back squats. And I just tend to steer away from deadlifts, not for any particular reason. Yeah, I think that certain bodies are primed for them. They do tend to be like one of the more problematic exercises for elite athletes. Elite athletes don't do deadlifts very often.
Interesting.
Because they can be cause for injury. Huh. And elite athletes, of all the people we should be looking at as far as exercise is concerned and making sure that you don't get injured off field, you should look at them. And they don't do deadlifts. There is not a football team in the world that gets their players to do deadlifts.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder why, just because of the injury?
Yeah, prone to injury, being fatigued and trying to get out one last repetition. And if your strength, if your form isn't perfect, and if you falter at any point, I think it's just one of those ones that's a little bit precarious.
Yeah. It's I see people doing heavy deadlifts all the time on social media, and it just looks like a back injury waiting to happen.
Yeah.
I
think that's part of it. It's a pissing contest.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert in this. I don't want to, I'm sure people will will happily debate this, but to me, it just looks like, yeah, the amount of flexion and stress and shearing force on your lumbar when you're lifting such heavy weight, yeah, it's wild. I mean, I couldn't do it. Which doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done, but it just, to me, it seems like it's a injury waiting to happen.
I wanted to talk about the Menno Henselman's post about it was something about addictive. Mike Israetel reposted it. It was like, sugar's not addictive, maybe, or ultra processed foods aren't addictive.
Oh yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. And it seemed like there was some semantics around addiction itself, around what that meant. But to me, it's like, I was like, okay, maybe it's not addictive as such, but it's certainly more-ish. So it's certainly like the case that if you start to eat an ultra-processed food, the ability to put that ultra-processed food down because it isn't satiating is hard to do. And given that most people who are obese can't stop eating ultra-processed foods or in a caloric, are eating too many calories, they're probably eating too many calories because they're eating too many ultra-processed foods, aren't getting satiated and are unable to put them down, and they consistently do it. So would you call that an addiction or not?
I mean, you ask the tobacco companies, which bought up all of these, many of the ultra-processed food conglomerates that they literally tried to make their products as addictive as cigarettes. And there's data that literally shows that ultra-processed foods tick off all of the boxes, all of the same boxes required, for the definition of an addictive substance. The same boxes are ticked off by ultra-processed foods as tobacco.
Yes.
I'm not saying that they're as addictive as tobacco, but certainly, like, you ask people if they've ever been addicted to junk food, and they will say yes.
Right.
So it's like, this is the kind of data that's just like gaslighting people. It's like, who's funding this data?
Yes.
And there's the question of semantics. Like,
I think it's about semantics.
Yeah.
I think it's like, I've heard, I really enjoy Dr. Mike Israetel's takes. I listened to his podcast with you. I thought it was fantastic. But one thing he talks about is, your ability to, it's really hard to put those foods down. And I'm like, isn't that addiction?
Yeah, 100%. And also, I mean, one of the key parts of the definition of what makes a substance addictive versus something that you just like and do repetitively is like, is it having a negative impact on your life? And it's like, these ultra-processed foods we know are foundational to the obesity epidemic. So if these are the foods that are responsible for your obesity, which is a health condition, then increasing your risk for cancer, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, then yeah, it's an addictive substance.
Yeah.
So I think the study in question, it was like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe this had to do with the recent like NIH Kevin Hall study where he claimed to have been censored by the current administration, and he was like booted because his study allegedly found that, there were some aspects of ultra-processed foods that didn't necessarily light up the brain in the same way that a traditionally considered addictive substance might. But it's like, it's behaviorally, how these foods affect you.
Yes.
You don't need like brain imaging to confirm whether or not, anecdotally you've ever been addicted to, ultra-processed foods, ultra-processed junk foods.
Yes.
Many people have said that they've been addicted to these substances. You're going to debate with them whether or not they're using the term addicted properly. It's just crazy.
Yes. It's like, no, you're not addicted. It's you.
Yeah.
It's very like calling a homeless person. Like, it's like, you're not homeless. You're unhoused.
Exactly.
It's like, no, I'm addicted to the film. Oh, not addicted.
You're not addicted. Yeah. Let's consult the DSM-5.
I wanted to tell you that syphilis is at an all-time high.
I was like, where's this going?
It's the highest level since the 1950s. And people are trying to fix it.
What's driving that? What do you think is driving that?
Well, it's sexually transmitted. A lot of people don't. Well, a lot of doctors don't know how to diagnose syphilis. During COVID, a lot of the resources that were put towards STD testing were taken away and put towards COVID. So basically, they stopped testing for it altogether. But doctors don't know how to assess for if somebody's symptoms are actually a symptom of syphilis.
What are the symptoms of syphilis?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Let's find out. What are the symptoms? use. You see those billboards all around LA.
Yes. Well, that's one thing that they've found is helpful, is that using those billboards does get people to go and ask their doctors if they have syphilis, which is how they're getting.
So primary syphilis, there's, I guess, there are a few different variants, but so you get a painless sore on the genitals, anus, or mouth. It appears 3 to 6 weeks after exposure, heals on its own. But then the secondary effects are skin rashes, mucous membrane lesions, fever, swollen lymph nodes, sore throat, patchy hair loss, fatigue, muscle aches. That doesn't sound fun. So it's on the rise.
It's on the rise.
I wonder in which demographics. Because, they're saying that older adults, that STDs are just running rampant in older adults, where conversations around STDs are more taboo than for younger populations. And also because there's the risk of pregnancy is out of the question, right? For older, like senior citizens and the like, that they're just having like a sexual like free for all.
It's so interesting because, you hear about teenagers, like, so for instance, the pregnancy rate, we'll talk about this too, but the pregnancy rate has gone up for women in their 40s and has dropped precipitously for teenage pregnancies, has gone down like crazy. And one thing that they say, there's a guy named Jonathan Haidt. Do you know him? Haidt. And he talks a lot about social media addiction. And he was talking about this, and somebody was saying, "Isn't this a good thing?" He's like, I mean, the fact that people are sexually active less when they're teenagers is not a good thing. It's a sign that they're getting their dopamine somewhere else. They're addicted to social media, so they're not interested in living life. They're not interested in getting drunk, losing their virginity, having their first kiss. They're not interested in any of it. And the fact that whilst that's happening, the elderly population is going, let's fuck, is fascinating.
It is fascinating. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, about younger people. I mean, I knew that they were having sex less, but I hadn't made the connection between like social media use and it's just providing this fake unearned dopamine.
Yeah.
That's supplanting the desire to get out there and try to
live.
Yeah.
And live your life.
Yeah.
You're actually just, all you're doing is watching other people live their lives.
Wow.
And we're probably all going to get into a loop where that's all we do until we end up recording ourselves not living life.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do find that whole thing rather depressing. And I even within myself, I think about social media addiction. I'd say I'm probably certainly addicted to my phone. Probably addicted to social media in the sense that if I have nothing to do, I'm on it. Or like sitting on the toilet, like pull it out. Like it's always
there. Yeah,
it's
But we all benefit from that. We love your content.
Thank you,
Luke Cook.
But you see, the amount I'm making it versus the amount that I'm consuming it, and I do feel the effects sometimes because I'm a creative person, so I wonder. Sometimes I go through phases of not being able to create anything, and I'm like, I wonder if my inability to be bored, because one of the things about creativity and creation is that they can kind of come to you when you're bored. Ideas come to you when you're bored, or the amount that you're bored helps your creative brain. And because we're not being bored and we're always pulling our phones out whenever we're in the middle of a conversation or something's disinteresting or whatever, that's a problem to the creative brain.
That makes sense. You're a fan of creatine, are you not?
I am.
I did want to talk to you about this new creatine study that...
yes, in Alzheimer's.
It's extremely exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
It's the first ever clinical trial looking at creatine as a intervention for Alzheimer's disease patients. And obviously, we've talked a lot about creatine in the past in terms of its ability to boost physical performance, improve cognitive function when you're sleep deprived, maybe play a role in supporting mental health. But this is the first study that ever tested creatine in the Alzheimer's disease population. And what it found was that it was a small trial. It involved 20 patients over 8 weeks. So short term, not a large population. But despite that, 20 grams of creatine a day led to a statistically significant cognitive improvement in memory, reading, recall, all of the cognitive functions that were tested. Creatine seemed to lead to a significant improvement.
Wow.
Which is incredibly exciting. Now, the caveats. It was a pilot study. There was no placebo group. So could have conceivably been a placebo effect. Although somebody on social media made a joke, which maybe was a little bit crass. It's like, if the patients have Alzheimer's disease, why do you need a placebo
Exactly.
group?
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Which is screwed up, but maybe there's some truth to it. Also, creatine is, because there's no flavor, I'm sure it can be blinded pretty easily, at least in terms of the patients.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
But as somebody who's had a loved one with dementia, I mean, this is very exciting because creatine it's got a robust safety record. It's cheap. It's widely available.
Yes.
It's naturally found in food.
Yeah. What is the relationship between Alzheimer's and dementia? Is it the same thing, just different words?
Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. So it's the most
it.
common form of dementia.
Cool.
There are other forms of dementia. There's vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia. We don't yet know if creatine has any impact on those variants, but at least for patients with Alzheimer's disease, there does seem to be a signal that it's potentially able to play a therapeutic role and address the symptomology rather than just removing the amyloid or whatever that some of these drugs do that don't seem to have a significant improvement on the actual the clinical features that we seek to improve for sufferers. Creatine may have an impact. So we've got to do more studies. We need larger populations and all that stuff, but it's very exciting.
What is the mechanism by which creatine works in the brain? We hear about its effects on PTSD, depression, all seem very positive. I would say, I have said, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, that it increases blood flow to the brain. That might be untrue. What is the mechanism by which all these things are happening, these great effects for the brain from creatine?
Well, I think it's not as clear what it's doing in the brain as the mechanism. The mechanism for skeletal muscle, I think at this point, is well elucidated, that it helps to replenish energy stores in the muscle. But the brain is a voracious energy consumer. So the brain, despite making up only 2 to 3% of the body's mass, accounts for 25% of your basal metabolic rate. It's a massive energy consumer. And so I believe the thinking is that it's essentially doing the same thing in the brain, that it's there to replenish energy stores because the brain is an incredibly energy hungry organ. And in Alzheimer's disease specifically, the brain struggles to create energy. There's what's called hypometabolism. This is a well-established, even preclinical feature of the condition, that the brain is struggling to generate ATP, which is its energetic currency, from glucose, which is its primary energy substrate. And so the proposed mechanism is that it's helping the brain to replenish its energy stores.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is, like, the dose that was used, as I mentioned, was 20 grams.
That's a lot.
It seems that that's the level of dose that is required to actually push creatine to the brain.
Right.
So, and my thinking is that, this is just my speculation, that, your muscles are more important from a survival standpoint.
Sure.
So when you eat when you consume the amount of creatine typically found in an omnivorous diet, your muscles basically get all that creatine.
Sure.
So the amount required to actually push creatine to the brain is going to be a lot higher than what's typically found in the diet.
Got it.
And studies have shown, and I've actually had to update my own thinking on this because, well, I was wrong in the sense that, we used to think that vegans were not getting, because a vegan diet is devoid of creatine naturally, because creatine is only found in red meat and fish, that vegans had lower levels of creatine in their brains. But actually the studies have shown that vegans and omnivores, that they have the same levels. So creatine doesn't actually differ in the brains of people, whether they're on vegan or omnivore diets, but supplemental creatine actually can increase the amount of creatine in the brain. So
got it.
Yeah. So that's why this high dose might be required, which kind of sucks because 20 grams is a lot of creatine, and it's like choking down sand. We don't yet know if a lower dose will push creatine to the brain to the same degree. But yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that, we'll get more studies. And I mean, if my mom was still around, I mean, it's definitely something that's safe enough where I would have absolutely tried it with her.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, have you tried to take more creatine than 5 grams a day? Have you done that yet?
I've tried, yeah. I don't get like stomach upset from it. I don't know. Do you? Have you?
Yeah, I go to if I have 10 grams, if I double the scoop in the morning, I usually just have 5. Sometimes I do 10. I have to go to the toilet.
You do? Interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, but I just got to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't upset my stomach. I just think it tastes like to me, it's like sand. I don't know. I mean, is there a way to dissolve it where it like...
Yeah, it doesn't dissolve very well, does it?
It doesn't dissolve very well. Yeah, maybe if you leave it in water longer, but it's also not stable in water. So for like over a long period of time, you don't want to keep it mixed in water.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I just make sure that I swish it so that it gets mobile, and then I dunk it.
Yeah, it's like something you got to choke down.
Yeah, I don't mind the taste. Do you hate the taste?
I don't think that there is no taste that I.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
Yeah. But also, like, there's no gummies and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think, like, hey, for a patient with Alzheimer's disease, like,
sure,
patients with Alzheimer's begin to crave. They'll develop a sweet tooth. I mean, that's what the literature shows, that like patients with Alzheimer's disease like will actually develop a sweet tooth, which is thought to be the brain crying out for sugar.
Wow.
Because it can't properly create energy. So maybe for an Alzheimer's patient, maybe that's a use case for these gummies, which like generally I'm not. I mean, I enjoy them for fun. Like, I think it's better to just down the powder because it doesn't have any calories in it. But hey, if you've got Alzheimer's disease and it's like your parent doesn't want to drink like sand water, I get it, right? Like totally. You and I are probably a lot more willing to do something than a 70-year-old is willing to do.
Yeah.
In the name of health. And so throw them a few gummies. Like,
yeah, I have seen, there's a guy named James Smith. You know James Smith? He's Chris Williamson's business partner. And he did a third-party test on a creatine gummy and found that they were like lying about the amount of creatine in them.
Ooh.
It was pretty juicy because I forget what brand it was, but they were reaching out to him to do like a paid post or something, and I think they kind of messed with him. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna have a look into your creatine gummies and see how much creatine was in them. And they claim to have like 2.5 grams per gummy, so you eat 2 to get 5, and it was like 0.3 grams or something. It was really bad.
I wonder the brand. I have no affiliation with Create. Was it that brand by any chance?
I don't know.
So
I don't know.
I have zero commercial affiliation with Create, but they've sent me a bunch of their gummies and I enjoy the taste. But I did, because I was very curious to know, I reached out to Darren Crando, who's a creatine expert. He's one of the world's foremost creatine experts, Canadian researcher. And I was like, hey, what do you think about these gummies? Like, is this BS? Like, and he's actually an advisor to the company.
Cool.
Yeah, I've discovered. And
nice.
He was like, yeah, they check all the boxes. And so I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe this was the brand, but
I don't know. Yeah, interesting. And then I wanted to talk to you about this because we bonded over this, but there's a sign around LA. There's a few now that say it's aimed at women. There's this Brazilian supermodel they've got on the picture, and the billboard says creatine that makes you toned, not bulk. And I'm like, oh, creatine doesn't know how to do that.
You're right. Exactly.
You know. But also I think it's so stupid. So I think part of what happens when you start to take creatine is that it fills your muscles with a little bit more water. You hold a little bit more water than you usually do. From my understanding, that's temporary. A, it's a good thing, and B, it's temporary. So A, it fills your muscles with water, which probably allows them to recover better, which is part of the recovery aspect of creatine, but that it's temporary. You don't always hold more water. The amount that I have to tell people about creatine, because they ask me, hey, what about creatine? And then they go on to try it, and they're like, I think it was really, it was hurting my gut. And I'm like, and one woman was like, I couldn't even stand. One day I couldn't even stand up and walk around because of the creatine. I'm like, that's surely a placebo effect. 100%. You were taking a very small amount of it. It's one of the safest drugs in the supplements in the world. I don't think it was that. The amount of brain energy that people are using in order to take creatine, they should just take creatine.
Totally psychosomatic, yeah.
I think people think it's this. I think it's pretty magical. I think it is pretty amazing. It's one of the most studied supplements, safest supplements in the world.
Yeah.
But the amount of people are talking to me about it, like, I'm a little bit worried about it. I'm like, worried about what? Like, you're probably going to hold 1 pound to 2 pounds more water than you ever would. And it's like, you won't even notice that. And it's going to make you work out better and feel better, think better. Just do it. Maybe titrate up, maybe have a small amount first and move on up.
I think some people just conflate like digesting food with bloating. It's like, oh, I've got some food in my stomach, I'm bloated. No, it's like you just ate.
Right.
I think there's a lot of I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of I don't know. Like it's like about the relationship that you have with your body and food, and it's like if you don't have a good relationship with food, you know, and you eat something and it makes you feel a little full, you know, then there's like people get nervous, but it's like it's like you're supposed to feel like you just put something in your stomach.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I will say that like before coming on this podcast or any podcast, I don't eat within the hours before because I found that I can think better if I don't eat. I think that I don't even know if this is true. Maybe this is something I learned from Dave Asprey's book back in 2015, but it's like that the mitochondria in the brain leave the brain and go and like deal with the digestion or something like that.
It's just no, there's it's a stressor. So it's like maybe your cortisol is, you know,
eating is a stressor. Is that what you
not
mean?
eating.
Not eating is a stressor.
Fasting. It's like a mild stressor. And so maybe that stressor is boosting cortisol, which is also like nature's caffeine, and it's making you a little bit more alert.
Yeah.
You know, like if you think about it, if you got like dumber and more lethargic once food ceased to be around, like you wouldn't make it very long as a hunter-gatherer. You
Right.
know? So there is like, your body is primed to become somewhat more alert.
Yes.
Once it senses that food is in short supply.
Yes.
You need the motivation and the energy to go and find your next foraging opportunity. Right?
Yeah, true.
There was a study, I think the journal was like PLOS1, where the name of the study was like always gamble while hungry. People tend to make more advantageous decisions when hungry.
Like good decisions.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's that 3 o'clock itis that people talk about, where it's like once their decisions have fatigued post-lunch, their decisions get worse. Like judges make worse decisions they found in courtrooms in the afternoon after lunch.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when you're like lethargic and your blood sugar is like on its way down.
People want to have a nap
Post
usually at that time.
calzone. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you, are you a fan of napping? Do you nap?
I'm not a fan because I can never do it properly. I always feel like
You want to go longer than you should.
Yeah. And I never actually get like a cycle of sleep in. I'm just like, and then my phone vibrates and I check my phone and then I try to do it again, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not good at it.
And then you get grumpy in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather just like stay awake, as painful as it may be, and continue to build up the sleep pressure so that when my head finally hits the pillow at night, I get like at least in my head, like I think an even deeper sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Did you see the study? There was another study that came out that I wanted to talk to you about. Looking at one's home proximity to golf
courses.
Yes. Did you see that?
I did see that. I thought it was so interesting.
Very interesting. It basically found that the closer that people who live, it was like a smaller study, but it was the lead researcher, senior author was Ray Dorsey, who he's been on the podcast in the past. He's the author of Ending Parkinson's Disease. He's, I think, an incredibly important, brilliant voice in the Parkinson's prevention space. And his study basically found that people who live less than a mile from golf courses seem to have a dramatically increased risk for Parkinson's disease. And the thinking is that it's like due to exposure to the chemicals that are sprayed on the grass that is potentially able to migrate into well water. And yeah, it was pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he's become a really vocal voice exposing the link between environmental pollutants, chemical solvents like trichloroethylene, and risk for Parkinson's disease, which is now the world's fastest growing brain disease. And it's important to underscore that the study was it was an observational study. There are lots of potential confounders, but they did try to adjust for age and, socioeconomic status, and stuff like that, other potential confounders. There's always going to be residual confounding. So again, I'm not like saying that this is the end all be all, but very, very interesting.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds amazing. What is that? Are those chemicals, that chemical that you mentioned, is that used for household cleaning and things like that?
Trichloroethylene is like, it was actually in the past, it was used to extract oils from seeds. It was like used in place of what we now use hexane for. to create seed oils, but
Right.
it's no longer used for that. It's used for degreasing electronics and various types of industrial machinery. It's primarily still used in dry cleaning.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, you definitely want to be really careful about dry cleaning your clothing with any regularity. Seek out a green dry cleaner.
Right.
Inquire, make sure they don't use trichloroethylene. If memory serves, the EPA very recently banned it. The EPA did recently ban it, but it's not immediately. The EPA always gives us like these timelines, like it's got 2 years or 4 years or whatever, for companies to like
figure it out.
But yeah, I mean, this is like definitely a step in the right direction, that we've got increased awareness around this stuff, but there's still the looming question about like all these herbicides and pesticides. We know occupationally they're linked to dramatically increased risk of Parkinson's disease, but the question is like, does living around areas that are routinely being sprayed, is that causally connected? What about being exposed to very low levels of pesticides, like extremely low levels of pesticides through our diets? Is a lifetime of exposure of very low levels in our diets risk factor? We don't know.
Yeah.
So these are all questions that we need to find answers to, but I am optimistic. I think that these are all questions that, to circle back to MAHA and the MAHA report, like these are all questions that we're now finally able to ask.
Yeah.
It seems like there's again, no sacred cows, that despite the fact that there are billions of dollars that go into the promotion of these chemicals, the researching of these chemicals, that now more than ever before, we can actually take a clear-eyed look at them and assess them independently, right? Like actually one of the amazing things that was said was that we need to look with increased skepticism at studies that are industry funded versus studies that are funded independently.
Right.
Which is like, when was the last time you heard an administration acknowledge that there's actually even a difference?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting to me, like with golf courses, there's no reason for them to not use the most heavy of chemicals in order to keep their,
right.
No one's going to eat it, so it doesn't really matter. So they can just spray whatever the hell they want on it to keep that grass green and beautiful. I mean, golf courses are amazing. Like they're like serenely beautiful, perfect lawns for as long as the eye can see. But they can use whatever they need to, whatever they want in order to make that happen.
It's also scary. Like, what if you're like a teen and you just got your summer job, like working as a caddy, on these golf courses? And
Yeah,
you're just
that's
like
right.
routinely being exposed,
Yeah, I mean, but people living right next door, and my mother-in-law, when we lived in Australia for a year in 2020, we lived next to a golf course, and so when me and Cara talked about that the other night, we're like, oh gosh. Anyway, I do think that's interesting, and I saw that Dr. Alan Bacon commented on your post when you posted about that and said, he's the type of person who would be like, no,
Yeah.
but he was like, no, my dogs all got cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was on a golf course. So.
I appreciated that he commented that, because I know that he also thinks organic is a scam.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, in a way, from what they're finding with the research on organic, it's that the food isn't any more nutritious.
right.
And it's like, well, okay, but what else? What other confounding things would make it? In that sense, maybe it is a scam, but it's also like, I'd prefer to have this thing not sprayed on it.
Yeah.
So when people say it's a scam, I'm always like, fine, but that's only talking about one element of it. It's talking about the nutritiousness of the food itself. I'm interested in the production of the food, and I don't want that shit sprayed on my food.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yep. I don't think it's a scam. I buy organic berries and dark leafy greens. I don't buy organic avocados. I don't buy organic citrus or bananas.
Yep.
I don't buy organic eggs. I buy pasture raised. I try to buy pasture raised eggs.
Yep.
But because you're the chicken's doing the detoxing for you in that case. Like if there is any kind of exposure risk, but there isn't. If we're talking about wheat and oats, which in this country, glyphosate is used as a desiccant to dry out the grains pre-harvest. Yeah, I'm buying organic. I'm trying to do my best to buy organic wheat, but that doesn't mean that if I'm at a restaurant and there's sourdough brought to the table, am I grilling the waiter to see if the wheat's organic? No, I'll eat it because it's like dose makes the poison. But
Yeah.
I I think when it's like something that you're routinely bringing into your home and feeding to your children, I think it's important to be deliberate about, you know, where you're spending your dollars and like what you're exposing your family to. And, you know, by increasing awareness for this and the potential health harms of these chemicals, you're going to bring the cost down ultimately. And that's the reason now that you can find organic at Target, you can find organic at Costco and Walmart and all these places because of advocates of advocates like what we're doing here today, Dr. Ray Dorsey. So yeah,
demand also. You know, people become aware and then they demand. They're like,
Exactly.
we want this. I want to ask you about the crystals. I've noticed them around your house. Why do you have crystals around your house? Are you a crystal?
I'm not a crystal guy, no.
Okay, like you don't believe in the magical element of.
I don't. I think they look nice though. They look pretty.
Okay, cool. So it's not about the energy or anything like that.
No, I couldn't tell you what this crystal is though, but it is beautiful, isn't it?
It is beautiful.
Yeah. No, my girlfriend is a big crystal
Oh, she's a crystal
fan.
one. When I met Cara, she used to take her crystals out to the full moon.
Really?
Yeah,
Charge them up?
bathe them. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh gosh, I've married. Yeah, it's an interesting woman.
Girl stuff, I guess. Well, Luke Cook, thanks for coming in.
Woo!
You are the man.
Love coming in.
Love you, brother.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening. Share this episode around with friends and loved ones, and I will catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Love you.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.